What's going on, guys, and welcome back to Combat Sports Central. Probably one of the biggest winners from the UFC 252 pay-per-view, Jiri Prochazka, who had his fair share of doubters, coming in as the Ryzen light heavyweight champion poached by the UFC, entering as the underdog from beginning to end of the fight lines. No one expected to see as brutal a knockout as we saw against the formerly never TKO'd or KO'd Volkan Oezdemier. But as now written in history, Jiri stopped the Swiss in an amazing performance. But where did this guy come from? Where did Jiri come from? How did most miss out on the potential of Jiri to step in and do exactly what he did? Today we look at Jiri in the newest episode of Career Retrospective. Jiri is a guy I had a hard time calling a prospect, as he has more fights than 11 of the top 15 UFC light heavyweights. However, while some made their early career just a path to the UFC, Jiri Prochazka took on all challengers in another world-class organization since its inception. Rizin, a top 3 Asia-based MMA organization who's held the likes of Floyd Mayweather and often works in conjunction with Bellator MMA, putting their champions up against each other once in a while. Kyoji Horiguchi was recently both the Ryzen and Bellator bantamweight champion, just to name an example. However, back to Jiri. Jiri started his pro MMA career after briefly taking up Muay Thai, which he had success at. He'd fight locally on the regional scene in the Czech Republic from April 2012 to June of 2013. He'd fight an astounding 7 pro fights in just over a year and go 7-1 in those contests. His only loss came from another prospect in Serbia, Bojan Velikovic, who'd also go on to someday fight in the UFC. From here, he'd travel a little more, taking up fights in both Germany and Russia, splitting results to set his record at 8-2. This would be the beginning of his first big MMA winning streak. He'd return to headlining in the Czech Republic again for the Gladiator Fighting Championship, which he would headline on almost every single one of their events, where he'd again go on a run of dominance. Winning 7 straight fights, Jiri found his new home on December 29th of 2015 with the debuting Japanese organization, the Ryzen Fighting Championship. This is where Jiri became a star, pairing his aggressive and wild style with beautiful and brutal finishes. He would make his debut on the inaugural event for Ryzen, where, like almost all other MMA organizations it began with a tournament. Over 2 events, the organization would crown the, quote, world's best fighter. In an open weight tournament, 8 fighters competed in the opening round on December 29th, and the winners would return 2 days later for the finals held to end the year on December 31st. The fights would also be contested not under the normal, what we see, 3 5-minute round basis, but instead 2 10-minute rounds, and there'd be no changes for the finals to the lead-ups. This led to more finishes and fighters testing their gas tanks against longer active time inside each round. Jiri would open his tournament against the former Japanese Olympic judo gold medalist and 14-4 Satoshi Ishii. Jiri wouldn't let Ishii use the clinch in any meaningful way throughout the fight and would pick up a debut win in under 2 minutes. In the stand-up, he'd be very, very dominant, and he picked Ishii apart until Ishii just didn't want any more. Then, in the first fight of the second day, Jiri would force prospect Vadim Nemkov to refuse to continue and give up his unbeaten 5-0 record. Vadim had more success in taking the fight to the ground and threatened different submissions. In an exciting back-and-forth first round, Vadim Nemkov actually emptied his gas tank and couldn't make it to the second 10 minutes, where in the end, Jiri was crowned the winner. In the finals of the tournament, Jiri would taste defeat for the first time in 11 straight fights. 17-4 Bellator standout King Mo would meet Jiri in the finals of the tournament. With a stoppage and a unanimous decision win in the opening rounds, King Mo got the fight to the comfort zone early, catching a kick and taking the fight to the ground. He'd sit in the guard, raining down some ground and pound for about 2 minutes before Jiri could power his way back to the feet. From there, Jiri would do as he often does and push the pace, often coming in wildly and void of fear, leaving his chin exposed. Here, that style would be his biggest downfall. While lunging in at King Mo caught Jiri on the chin with a fully loaded right hand that would shut the lights off and cap off a very entertaining inaugural event for the Ryzen Fighting Federation.
King Mo had been doing it this entire tournament.
This defeat would serve as the end of Jiri's massive win streak, but would begin another. Jiri would bounce back on Ryzen's first numbered event and make a statement in under 3.5 minutes. He'd feint his way into the pocket and deliver a beautiful 1-2 with the right landing on the button, then finish the combination with the fate-sealing left hook. His next fight would be his only decision in his next 9 fights. He'd pull together a run of 7 wins from that night in December of 2015 to the same December 31st year-ending card, this time in 2018. From the TKO win against Brandon Halsey on the same card as the super fight between Tenshin Nasukawa and Floyd Mayweather, and also saw the crowning of the first Bellator Rizin bantamweight champion Kyoji Hiraguchi, who submitted Darian Caldwell in the very first round, foreshadowed from earlier. Nonetheless, Jiri used the win to send out a message demanding Rizin gold. Rizin obliged the post-fight request and set up an inaugural light heavyweight title fight, and who else but Jiri's former opponent, King Mo, would step in to once again stand in the way of Jiri's championship hopes. This time around, both King Mo and Jiri got into deep waters. Jiri was much more patient and allowed the fight into the third round, with both guys throwing everything they had at one another. The third round again was quite back and forth, but by the marking of the middle of the 5-minute third round, Jiri drowned out King Mo, stopping him via strikes to win the Ryzen light heavyweight world title. From there, Jiri would be set up with former UFC fighters Fabio Maldonado to headline Ryzen 19 and CB Dalloway to be a part of Ryzen 20. These fights would be scheduled between 2 months of each other, but Jiri only needed a grand total of 3.5 minutes to stop both guys in the very first round, respectively. And finally, the most recent performance, being poached and signed to the UFC, he stepped in there against KO artist Volkan Oezdemier and knocked him out, bringing the Ryzen light heavyweight champion into the top 10 ranks of the UFC light heavyweight standouts. From here, we'll see where Jiri is booked next, but you can be certain that you'll get a wild fight or an amazing finish like Jiri has produced throughout his entire goddamn career. Now that'll do it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed, remember to smash that like button, subscribe to Combat Sports Central on YouTube, and turn that notification bell on so you don't miss content such as this. You don't miss top prospects, you don't miss top contenders. That's what we're here to bring y'all. Also, comment down below, where do you think Jiri Prochazka will be 5 years from now? Do you think he's going to be inside the top 5 of the UFC light heavyweights? Do you think he has what it takes to dethrone world champion John Jones? Let me know that and any other ideas you have about Jiri Prochazka in that comment section below. But again, that will do it for today, guys. I hope to see you in the next one. Peace out.